everybody. Welcome to Between Three Ferns, the Arrow After Show here on theStream.tv, where we're going to be running down tonight's new, great, fantastic episode of Arrow. I'm actually really excited to talk about this episode tonight. I want to introduce first all of us sitting up here, starting off with me. My name's John Campia. I'm going to be your host tonight, and joining me sitting over here.
Hey everyone, it's Ann Campia, the better Campia.
The better Campia, and over here.
Hey everyone, Court K, what's up?
So, listen, before we get started with tonight's episode titled The Magician, need to apologize for the last minute. We didn't have an Arrow After Show last week. Some stuff came up last minute. We weren't able to make it into studio. So our apologies for that. But I'm going to be frank with you. As it turns out, it might have been a pretty good thing, because that might have been the worst episode of Arrow I've ever seen. I mean, really.
Maybe not the worst, but I think for me, the worst of this season.
I can't think of any episode of Arrow that I just flat out didn't like, ever in the history of the show, until last week. Last week I just flat out didn't like
I would disagree with you. I really liked that episode.
Really?
I did. I liked the heart-to-heart that Queens had together, and it was a nice little adventure, and it was good to see her train a little bit.
The whole, I'm going away forever, but wait, we talked for 30 seconds over lunch. I'm good. I'm coming home.
But the thing is, I would have been pissed if she stayed over there.
But it would have made more sense. I think I could have drawn that. Anyway, I don't want to go into a whole review of that. Needless to say, but here's the funny thing. Whereas I thought last week's episode was probably the poorest episode we've seen out of the series so far, tonight's episode, I haven't asked either one of you guys what you thought about tonight's episode yet.
Nope.
For me, honestly, best episode I can remember in a long, long time. I loved tonight's episode. I thought it was fantastic. And maybe it's just because I have such a bad taste in my mouth about last week's episode, or maybe just tonight's episode was just that damn good. Either way, I'm really happy. Now, before we get into the details about that, cute little Arrow connection thing here, Ann and I had a chance to go to the Knocking Point party this week. Knocking Point is, of course, the wine that we showed off here the other week, and that is owned by Stephen Amell and his partner, his business partner.
Yeah.
And so we had a chance to go down to that party and actually hang out a bit with Stephen. No, we'll bring up this picture here. So there's Ann and I with Stephen. I don't know why Ann looks so short, but there you go.
I don't know why you are in the middle.
Yeah, you should have been in the middle.
I feel like maybe you were more excited to see him, or you were trying to keep me away from the abs.
Maybe it was the abs thing. Like, can't get too close to the abs. They have their own gravitational field.
But it was definitely a lot of fun, and
it was
good charitable event. So.
Lots of wine, lots of stuff.
Lots of wine.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. So anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get into tonight's episode of Arrow called The Magician. Whenever Merlyn isn't around, we tend to talk a lot about Merlyn, and tonight Merlyn really returned, and returned as a bona fide, full-blown, full-fledged badass, which was terrific to see. So anyway, let's start in with, as we always do, we talk about our positives, we talk about our negatives, we give some overall thoughts, and then we're going to take your questions. Listen, guys, if you're watching us live and you've got some thoughts or some questions you want to ask, tweet them to us using the hashtag Arrow After Show. So use the hashtag Arrow After Show and tweet those out. And as we get closer to the end of the show, we will pull out some of your questions and thoughts and read them on air. So Ann, let's go over to you and start with you. Some of your positives about tonight's episode of Arrow.
Okay, I have a laundry list, so please bear with me. But first of all, happy 50th episode to Arrow.
Was the 50th episode tonight? Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes, I mean, granted, Supernatural is actually on their 600th episode, but 50 is still really good. You never know when a show's gonna make it that far, so kudos to Arrow, and like you said, this is one of my favorite episodes ever. Maybe not my most favorite, but it was really
I think Supernatural's on like its 200th or something. They're on season 9, 22 episodes a season. Yeah, it wouldn't be 600 episodes.
Something like that.
Something like that.
But not to knock Arrow, because that 50 is a great number. So John Barrowman, like you said, Malcolm Merlyn, he's back. I love his presence on the show. I think he brings that strength and that intimidation, but at the same time, he's so hyper smart, and he's always one step ahead of Oliver, and I like that Oliver has that counterbalance, so to speak. Like, especially in this episode, he was always one step ahead of Oliver.
Yeah.
He knew what Oliver was trying to do when he shot him with the arrow. He knew that Oliver was after him because he thought that Malcolm killed Sara. So there were a lot of things that Malcolm knew, and we found out in this episode that Malcolm knows about the prison on the island.
Right, yes.
So, Malcolm is the man, and John Barrowman plays him so well. And his caliber of acting also shows on camera, so I just like having him there. So I'm really happy he's back. Daddy Merlyn is back, and that's great. And Ra's al Ghul, we got to see Ra's al Ghul for the first time.
Yes.
And while it was just a quick second of it and just a very quick introduction at the end, I think everyone was waiting for this moment. And so that's definitely a positive for me. And Oliver has fucked with the wrong people, I think. And I'm nervous for him because the League is no one that you want to mess with. And now that he has basically declared war against them, we're in for the long haul. I think this will set up the rest of the season. This is it for Oliver and the big baddie for the season. So that's really cool to see. And we see in the flashbacks the tie-in with Fyers, is it Fyers? Fyers, from season 1, from the pilot.
Right.
And his connection with Amanda Waller. For quite some time, we wondered who that lady was in the heels that was sitting at the desk. And now we know the connection. Now we know that, episode 50 is now linked to episode 1, which I love that they do that in the show. Just so smart that they tie everything together. And we now know that she was after China White.
Yeah.
And so this is really reminiscent for comic book readers of year 1 of Arrow. If you guys have read that comic, China White is in there. And this is just reminding me of when I read that, because this is almost identical to that story. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do there. And China obviously is still alive. We haven't seen her since season 2. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that as well. So there was just a lot of stuff. I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't want to take away from what you guys are going to say.
Okay, let's go over to you. Some of your positives.
I mean, there's a lot of positives in this episode. It was a great episode, and like you said, Anne, obviously Daddy Merlyn, he's such a great actor. Every scene he has, every line he spits out, he's a show stealer. I like his fighting scenes. I like that he's back and he's a badass. I like his relationship with Thea. I like the fact that they gave him a good reason to come back, because now that Tommy's gone, as far as we know, he's got Thea to take care of, and now he has to, in a way, Oliver has to protect him because it's his sister's father, So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic. Of course, Nyssa coming back.
Right.
Badass chick. I love her. She's hot. She's sexy. She's a great fighter. She's phenomenal. Loved her in this. I like that she has no problem going up against Oliver. And like you said, China White. Everything in this episode was good. I really, when we go to the negatives, I'm not going to have much to say, because just scene after scene after scene, I was just staring at the screen like, okay, I'm glad Nyssa's here. I'm glad Merlyn's here. I like Katie Cassidy's role in this particular situation, except even her, and it was good.
For me, getting to Merlyn, one of the coolest things that I still get the feeling about Merlyn is that Merlyn, okay, that's great for Oliver to say, Merlyn's under my protection. I still get the feeling Merlyn is the baddest man in Starling City, and that includes Oliver. Because you notice when Nyssa showed up, he had no problems with Nyssa. Like, he handled, when they showed up in the monastery thing, he handled her like that, like no problem. Far easier than Oliver was able to handle her. And even so much that he can have his back turned to her, let her shoot off an arrow, no problem, boom, boom. And I had that feeling that when Oliver had the drop on him near the end and had the bow on him, I have a feeling if Oliver had let loose the arrow, he would have caught it or he would have done something. That's just the feeling I get. I think he's the real deal. And I think he knows that, but I also think he wants to work with Oliver and all that kind of stuff. And it brings up interesting things about him too, because we all know he is the villain, especially from season 1. He's ultimately the villain. Killed 500 people in the city. But when we get caught up in thinking about that, we sometimes forget, this is not an excuse, but we sometimes forget that his turn to evil, in a sense, was born out of innocence and pain. It was born out of the loss of his wife. And then from that came, he had the same mission as Oliver did in many ways, that he wanted to save the city. It's just that he thought saving the city meant, culling off the wheat from the chaff and killing a lot of people to do it, but ultimately at the core of it was that. He was misguided, he was twisted, but I think a lot of that misguidance and the twisting of his morals and everything came from pain.
Well, what does that you say about villains? The scariest thing about a villain is that where they believe
The scariest villains, this is true in movies and television, whatever, the scariest, most terrifying villains are the ones who think they're the good guys. The ones who don't think they're villains. They are because they bring with them the power of conviction as well, and that's what makes them so terrifying. You're right, Nyssa, it's great to see her in there. It was nice seeing her play off of some of the other characters as well, so that was pretty cool. Diggle is always an anchor presence for every single episode, and he was that again. I'm liking, I guess it's not Detective Lance anymore. It's now Commander Lance or Captain Lance or whatever.
Lance.
But Lance, just Lance. It's Lance.
Daddy Lance.
Daddy Lance. I'm liking Daddy Lance more and more and more through the shows. He's coming across as more real to me and more tangible. And I really like that. I do appreciate that a lot. The action sequences were great. I like the three-way fight that broke out between Merlyn, Arrow, and Nyssa. That was very crazy. Like, who's doing what? I don't know. So there was a lot of, and I gotta say, Thea's haircut is growing on me.
I love it.
I like the haircut. Thea's haircut, I dig it.
I like it too, but we'll talk about her in my negatives.
Sure. And so with that, let's get into some of the negatives. And, somebody was asking me, well, John, why, when you're doing an Arrow After Show, if you're a fan, why do you talk about the negatives? Because I believe if you're a real fan of something, if you're a real, true fan of something, you want the best for it, and you want to point out the things that you think were weak. I mean, because that's what real fans do. Real fans don't stick their heads in the sand. And look, let's be honest. If all we did was sit up here and talked about every episode is perfect and everybody in the show is awesome and everything's so great, if we did that all the time, then you would never believe us about us saying we like certain things if we don't also be honest about the things we think could have been better. So that being said, let's start with you, Ann, on this one. Let's start with some of the things you thought maybe they could have done better this episode.
The one big criticism I have for this episode is that while I liked Laurel's purpose in this episode, like Ori said, I feel like while she is still hurt over Sarah's death, for someone so smart, she's still acting so irrational about some things. And it's just really, really bothering me. And I know we didn't get to talk about last week's episode, but we saw that when she thought, oh, I'm gonna go out and kick somebody's butt with a bat. Like, really? And then this week's episode where, she just went out on a whim. As soon as she thought Malcolm killed Sara, she's like, Nyssa, do everything you can to kill him. And it was just, there was really no thought put behind the fact that she wanted Malcolm dead because somebody said that he potentially killed Sara. I just feel like she could have thought through that a little bit more.
You know what's really frustrating about that is that it was just 2 episodes ago that she was in the exact same situation. I want that guy dead. Well, we don't think he did it. No, he did it. Kill him. And remember, she was pulling the trigger on a gun that Oliver had taken the bullets out.
So every episode,
so you think she would have learned
that.
something from that. Instead now, nope, blah, 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 he killed Sara, blah, blah, kill him again. So that you're absolutely right. That was frustrating.
And she makes a living out of being a district attorney, and you have to go off of facts.
And I'm sorry.
And know what you're doing.
She's a district attorney, and she's pretty stupid. I'm sorry, but this character is turning into a really stupid character. She's dumb. I mean, she's flying out. I understand. You gotta understand the hurt and the pain coming off sister. I get that if there wasn't a history of stupidity behind the character, about acting really emotionally, flying off the handle, being very weak. And she's very, very weak.
And I'm hoping that the writers are aware of this and that they're handling it and they're going to show not only her physical evolution, but her mental growth. But every episode, I just get so bothered by the fact that she's just not thinking these things through.
And what really exasperates that and makes that even worse is that she's on a show that have these wonderfully strong, intelligent female characters surrounding her. Whether it was Sara before they killed her off, whether it's Felicity, whether it was Moira before they killed her off. Like, this is a show that is populated by intelligent, strong, heroic, brave female characters. And the fact that that's the case, it kind of makes it, when she acts so irrationally, so weak, so wishy-washy, so just badly, it makes it stand out even more because you've got these great examples of characters around her that make her stand out as a really bad one. And it's frustrating too because there are some episodes where I'm like, how many times have I said on this show where I've gone, you know what, Laurel's starting to grow on me, and then they put her on a 3-episode streak where she's just an idiot. It's like, anyway.
It's just inconsistent. It's
Yeah.
just really inconsistent. And I guess the fact that Nyssa followed suit for a little bit of this episode also bothered me because in my mind, Nyssa is badass, like you said. Intelligent, physically strong, and just the fact that
Hot.
she was also, and hot, but the fact that she was also like, yeah, I'm going to go after him because he definitely
But at
killed
least
Sara.
with her, they wanted Merlyn dead anyway for their own and other reasons,
True.
you know? So at least she had that excuse.
Right.
Anyway, what about you, Kara? What are some of your negatives for today's episode?
Today's episode, I missed Felicity. I know she was
Yeah.
busy.
Hanging
over
out
there
with
in
Barry.
Central City with Barry, hanging out. But I did miss her. Thea is a fucking liar. That bothered me. Excuse my French. But so she went on a rampage because everyone lied to her, and then she decides to lie to her brother. If she wanted to start on a clean slate, why did she do that? Wasn't feeling that. I am kind of glad, though, that she didn't show her moves against Nyssa, because I was kind of worried that she was going to do that and fail miserably, and I'm glad that they did not go that way. I also hope that Thea and Roy do not get back together. I just don't think that's necessary. I'm not about, love storylines. And for me, the history, the backstory, other than the Amanda Waller part and it was China White, the backstories this season for me have been a little forgettable, and I don't know if because they're not touching base on it enough or they're not developing enough, but they haven't engaged me that much, and including in this particular episode. I think that Laurel, in terms of her training, if it's only because she's going to a boxing gym and that's her training, that's just not good enough. So I just want to see more of that.
I got to go on some. Although some of my negatives are smaller, nitpicky things. I agree with their flashback things this season have been thin.
Yeah.
It feels thin, but it is only episode 4, and what the problem might be is just that they're making their flashbacks very slow.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time we get to episode 8 or 9, all the backstory stuff they're showing us will make more sense. So I'm willing to be a little bit more patient with that. So let's see what that evolves into. I was kind of frustrated. The Laurel stuff we've already talked about. Don't need to go into that again too much. I was a little bit frustrated by the Thea stuff in the sense that, wait, she just became this badass ninja in 5 months, which I'll go into later. In 5 months, she's this badass ninja. And Nyssa comes to get her, and all Nyssa does is grab her by the arms, and Thea is, no, and is taken away like a damsel in distress.
Well, there was a reason for that, right? Because she didn't want, Roy was still aware when he was on the ground, so she saw him looking up at her, and I don't think she wanted to
tip her hand?
Yeah,
But then they got all the way back to warehouse and had her tied up and hanging upside down.
I'm just glad she went that route because I don't think she could ever kick Nyssa's ass. So if they went the route where she was trying to beat her up, I would have been disappointed.
But you at least defend yourself. Try, don't you think? But also then, okay, let's get to Roy. Roy decides when he realizes Nyssa has showed up to take Thea, right? What does Roy do? Not go and stand in front of Thea. First, I have to jump onto the hood of this car. For some reason, I gotta jump on the hood of this car.
Parkour.
And do this parkour flip and land. Now, forgive me guys, I could have done this. But no, that wasn't good enough. I have to jump on the hood of the car, do some flip, and take a blow dart in the neck. I mean, that would just seem so bloody ridiculous.
It's really Roy, though, isn't it?
It really is Roy.
You wouldn't expect anything else from him.
And I think one of the things that frustrated me about the episode too is, and I don't know if this is a bad thing that they did it, because maybe it's good that I'm feeling frustrated about this, but I got excited when Oliver went to Thea and said, look, I promised you no more secrets, no more lies, clean slate. And then the next words out of his mouth were lies.
Yep.
And it's like, because I got excited. I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually going to open up to her. He's going to let her in and let her know all this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to have to keep track of who's lying to who and what the lies are anymore. And the very next thing out of his mouth was lies. So I was much less frustrated with Thea lying to him because Thea's the one who got burned. Like, look, sometimes I was frustrated with Thea last season, but she got crapped on. That whole season was one big giant dump on her head. That's what it was. I mean, she just, she realized everybody lied to her. Her mother lied to her. Her brother lied to her. Her life was put in danger. Then her mother died because of the lies. Found out that some other dude is her actual father. You know, and all this, every week it was like something bad happening to her. And she's like, fuck this, I'm out. And she takes off and goes and comes back. And I can completely, I at least more can understand her being more defensive and guard and her still putting up the walls. Because remember, it was Oliver said he wanted the clean slate with her. And so she played along, but she's got a little bit of payback to dish out. But Oliver, I'm frustrated with, because he made all these promises to his sister, and the very first lines out of his mouth was a lie. And like I said, maybe it's good that the show did that, because it's going to have a very solid narrative purpose. But just as a viewer, I was very frustrated with him about that. But these are all, oh, and I was a little bit underwhelmed with the reveal of Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, me too.
But who knows? Give him an episode or two, and I may suddenly think this is the biggest badass on television. So, but I'm just saying, at first, I was just a little underwhelmed by the reveal. Let's see how it actually plays out when he's in an episode or two. Oh, and Oliver, that's great and all, but I don't think Oliver would go standing up to the daughter of the demon and say, "You let the League know this. He's under my protection." It's like, come on, you're one guy.
Yeah, I know.
And you had a hard time just against one League of Assassin fighter. Give me a break.
It does remind me, I do have one negative, and it's a small one, but shouldn't he be dead broke right now?
And where does he live, by the way? Where is he sleeping?
I think he sleeps in that cave.
Maybe he sleeps in the cave. But when his sister, I'm so glad that Thea's asked him, "How are you going to pay for this?" And he never really answered it. It's just, I don't know.
Is there something we don't know?
She's like, investors
I
coming her way, like no problem. It's just.
Well, the investor's clearly her dad, I think.
Yeah.
So Merlin's bankrolling that. But like, see, those nitpicky things aside, terrific action, big plot turns they've brought into this. Return of significant, wonderful characters. The introduction to a character we've been waiting to see for 2 seasons. All such a landmark episode. So I'm very, very happy with the episode altogether. So listen, guys, I said we would take a few minutes and take some of your comments. So for those of you who are watching us live, once again, you might have just enough time here. Fire in some tweet questions or comments to us using the hashtag ArrowAfterShow, and we will get to what you guys are talking about. So I'm going to start reading some off here and just see what we got. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is from Batman TX, who writes, "Hello, everyone. My question is, do you think Talia al Ghul will be on the show?" Interesting question, because a little bit earlier, somebody else tweeted and asked, do you think maybe it was Talia al Ghul, although we've never heard her mentioned, I don't think, except a reference to Nyssa's sister.
Right.
Somebody suggested it's Talia al Ghul who killed Sara. And the reason I give some credence to this is, number one, when Sara saw the person about to shoot her, she didn't feel totally threatened, but seemed familiar with them. Number two, somebody sent me a de-jarbled, because you hear the voice and it's digitized. Somebody sent me a thing of the voice undigitized, and it's clearly a female voice. So that's an interesting theory. It's an interesting theory that maybe it's, Talia, a jilted Talia al Ghul, who's jealous that her sister had somebody or whatever and decided to kill them and whatever. So I'm going to go out on a limb. I got nothing to base this on at all. But I'm going to say to your question, Batman TX, I think we will be introduced to Talia al Ghul by the end of the season. Once again, might not, but my guess is we will. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I don't think so. I don't see that happening. I don't think Talia's the one that killed Sara. I don't. I think it more likely would be Thea than Talia.
Really?
Yeah. If. But.
Well, we got a glimpse into the motivation, right, from this episode, that Ra's al Ghul didn't like Sara. He didn't really like her. So, I mean, it has to be, in my mind, somebody from the League, and it would be so cool if it was Talia. I'm going to go with you and say, yeah, sure.
See, I think they're making it once again, they're making it too obvious that Ra's al Ghul is the one who killed her. I got a feeling it's not. I think it's another misdirect.
I don't think Sarah's big enough for him to even care, right?
No, exactly.
He can snap his finger and point and say,
I don't feel like Ra's al Ghul would travel to Starling City to do something like that. Okay, Ty Williams writes in, my girlfriend and I think the scene between Oliver and Malcolm is the best acted scene of the series so far. There were a couple of really strong scenes between Stephen Amell and Manu Bennett last season, but that scene in the street, that's got to be on par with anything between Steven.
Yeah.
I'll at least say it was on par with anything Steven and Manu did. That was a terrific scene, especially Barrowman.
Yeah.
Like Barrowman.
He just brings this higher level of acting ability to me every time he's in a scene.
Right.
And you know what I keep on saying that we've seen, one of the great things about Amell in this show is that we've seen him go from a relatively inexperienced actor, the guy who had the right look and the right attitude and work ethic and the body to be Arrow, but we have seen him consistently grow as an actor. Throughout, he's get better and better and better. And one of the great things about that scene with Barrowman today, I feel like you suddenly put him in with somebody who is Stephen Amell's better, who's a better actor than Amell. And what can happen when you do that, it's like in athletics. When you put somebody in there with a fighter who's a better fighter than you, it will force you to elevate. And I felt like watching Barrowman just destroy that scene, you know. I felt like we were watching Amell break through his own ceiling too, to rise to that level as well. And they just started playing off each other with such great intensity that it was great to see. I wish that scene was longer. I really do. I wish that was a longer scene than what we got.
I totally agree with you. When the scene ended, I was kind of, aw, I want to see another one of those before this.
I'm sure we'll get more
episode
before the
ends.
season's over.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to Dane Red and to the aforementioned Supernatural. Could there be a crossover between Supernatural and Arrow? You know what? There's nothing that says they couldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're buddies, like Stephen
Stephen
Amell
and Jensen and
exactly. Dean?
and well,
No.
Jensen Ackles and what's the other guy's name from? It's like my favorite show on TV, and I can't remember.
Sam
his
and
name.
Dean. But
Sam and
anyways, the
Dean.
real actors,
The three of them are
they're
actually like
super
buddies in real
yeah.
life. They hang out in real life.
So I could totally see them just like walking in the background of one of Arrow's scenes, or maybe Stephen Amell hopping on their show. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, lots of questions about who do you think killed Canary? Let's see. What do you think about Laurel's story? I think it's pathetic. I'll say this again. I am getting dangerously close to giving up on Arrow. I've always said that if once they start down the clear path that they're going to make Laurel the new Canary, that's going to be time for me to check out. My brain just can't handle that. Right now, they're on two strikes. Strike one was Roy, just like that, is a super ninja in the streets. And by the way, why is Roy running around with a mask while you got Diggle just there in his leather jacket?
I know.
Hey guys, you look like a fool. But anyway.
Look at that baby.
And then strike two was Thea, like that, super ninja. And once they go Laurel, if they do that, then that'll be strike three for me. So I was. This is one of the reasons why I thought last week's episode was the worst I've seen. It just, once again, she's in a boxing class punching a bag, and Nyssa says, "You've been training." No, she went to a gym like millions of other people do and is punching a bag. So I was super frustrated by that. So I'm not a big fan of any of that. Let's see. I need you guys to talk so I can look up questions.
Yeah, no, I'm looking up things too. Okay, here's, could Tommy Merlyn be brought back with the Lazarus Pit and go psychotic and become Red Hood? This is by Austin.
Wow. I don't know about becoming Red Hood, but I mean, the Lazarus Pit does wonders. I mean, I would love to see Tommy back just because I love the actor and I love the character, and I feel like they killed him off so soon. And now that Malcolm is like playing daddy to Thea, every time I see how close that they're getting, I feel for Tommy because he's dead and he didn't have that relationship with Malcolm, you know? He didn't have the time with Malcolm. And I think if Malcolm was in the state of mind that he is now, that he would have been more of a father to Tommy than he was, in the season that we saw.
Do you guys think that Thea is on the road to becoming a bad girl, like a bad guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would be the most interesting thing they could do with her
Right?
at this point. I think that would be a really fascinating thing, so I'm kind of curious about that. Okay, guys, we're just about out of time, so we got time for one more here. Let's see, what is this? Brad Ass TV writes, do you think we will see more crossovers with The Flash, or do you think they should keep them separated? I I know they have a 2-hour crossover coming in December. I think 1 hour of it is going to be Flash, 1 hour of it is going to be on Arrow. So, and I think they should cross them over.
I do too. I mean, that's how they have each other as like brothers, you know?
Can I just say, I know we're not the Flash after show, but this second crossover that they did between yesterday's episode of The Flash and today, and how we see Felicity just kind of come in at the end, it's so good. They're doing such a good job of crossing the shows over, and I can't wait to see how much more they do. The characters just work so well together. There's chemistry there, and the stories make sense. They're not just forcing characters into each other's world. You know, Barry had a place in Star City, whereas you know, Felicity and Oliver have a place in Central City. So I
I said this, I think last season or earlier this season. I feel like they are setting up. Oliver is going to be the Batman of this universe. You know, because in the comics, Batman is kind of the linchpin of everything and everybody. And I think that where they're setting it up is that since they can't use Batman in the television universes, I feel like they're setting up Ollie to be that Batman figure. And everybody else are the auxiliary heroes around him, even if they're outside in other cities, because we already see that Barry comes to him for advice and guidance and what do I do sort of thing. So I think they're setting up Oliver as that Batman type of character. So it'll be cool to see how they continue to go with that. All right, guys, we are fresh out of time for this installment of the Arrow After Show. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Don't forget, there are other great after shows playing here on the theStream.tv After Show Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Look around. It's, you know, Arrow. Others. There are lots of great shows being covered here on the stream. Make sure you check them out. I want to thank, of course, the ladies joining me. First of all, over here, Ann Campia. Ann, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me at Ann Campia, as well as Corey and I at Teamimation.
And over here, of course, Corey Teke. Corey, where can people find you?
Yes, at Teamimation and KAORIOUS at Kaorius.
And you guys can find me on all the various social media networks, Facebook or Twitter or whatever, just at John Campia. So that'll do it for this installment of the Arrow After Show. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. And don't forget, become an Arrow-vangelist. This is a television show, Arrow, that is such high quality, doesn't get the viewers that it deserves. Spread the word about the show, get people introduced to it, tell them to go over to Netflix, start watching season 1, season 2, and they will become hooked for life. So that'll do it for us, for all of us here at the Arrow After Show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.